Since the UFC announced a title eliminator between Robert Whittaker and Dricus du Plessis, the MMA world has gone crazy because we all know Khamzat Chimaev would dominate both of those guys and should be fighting for the title right now. We'll explain why and get into some UFC predictions next.
Broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is The Community MMA with your host, Chris Cross.
Everybody's upset. Everybody's upset. Everybody's upset.
Oh my God, bro. Oh my God, bro.
Everybody's upset.
Well, the MMA world is going crazy today. It's your boy Chris Cross. And I knew it. The other night at Fight Night, I'm looking through the comments of other videos, waiting for Fight Night to start, as we do every Saturday. And then I see someone commented and said, Whittaker versus du Plessis just announced. Title eliminator. I'm like, no way. So of course I Google it, and it's true. And my immediate thought is like, people are going to go crazy when they see this.
Whoa!
Because you're basically saying both these guys are better than Khamzat Chimaev.
Everybody's upset.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Oh my God, bro.
I mean, you know, you listen to Robert Whittaker, won't even honor Khamzat because he's not in the top 5. That's just a way to dismiss him. Then you got du Plessis, who, listen, he basically survives in the fight against everyone else inside the octagon and then finds a way to win in the end. Well, I could tell you right now, he's not going to do that against Khamzat. Khamzat will finish him in the first round. That's not even a fight. It's not even a fight. And now so let's back this up real quick. So this is why people are upset, and this is why it's crazy. So first we got to wait for Robert Whittaker and du Plessis to fight. Okay, so a few months away. All right. Then after that, you're gonna have to wait 6 to 8 months, maybe 4 to 6. Let's just say 6 months solid for Izzy to fight the winner. And then heaven forbid Izzy loses, then he gets a rematch, and then you're looking at another 6 to 8 months, like you did with Pereira. So we're waiting through, at best, 2 fights, and at worst 3 fights, with about 6 months time in between. So at best we're looking at a year, and at worst we're looking at 1.5 years to 2 years. That's what this announcement means. So at first when it comes out, okay, Robert Whittaker, du Plessis, and a title eliminator, everybody's processing. And then these things start to go through your head like, oh my gosh, worst case scenario could be 1.5 years, 2 years. Best case, 1 year and some change. And that's not good. Because some of you that can't stand Khamzat still want to see him fight because you want to see him lose. Those of us who like Khamzat from the very beginning, like myself, and there's a lot of us out there, believe he's already a 2-belt, maybe 3-belt champion if the UFC plays his cards right. And they're blowing it right now. They're absolutely blowing it. And Kenneth Bruner weighing in. The UFC has a systemic matchmaking problem with the company. I don't think it's Dana. We have all seen the decline of the matchmaking over the last 2 years. It's undeniable. It's obvious they are going for quantity over quality when it comes to fight cards. Yeah. Look at UFC 288. Literally, they should have canceled that card. Trying to save the card with Burns versus Bilal, with midget fighting as the main event. Sean Shelby and Hunter Campbell should have been fired years ago. They're terrible. And that's his opinion, yeah. And when it comes to the matchmaking, you know, it has been kind of crazy lately because all of a sudden we're living in the age of rematches. I mean, it seems like in every division there's rematch. The champion loses, immediate rematch. It wasn't always like that. Just because you lost a belt doesn't mean you always get it. You know, some guys did. If you're a champion for a long time, like an Usman and Adesanya, fine. I have no problem with it. But when you start making are setting up rematches in like every division. Like we had to sit through 4 Figueiredo Morenos, and you know, and that kind of came by situation because you had the draw in there. One guy win, the other guy win, then a 4th fight. All this stuff going on. So okay, but again, when you start making it every division, that's when we have a problem. That's when we have a serious problem. But Khamzat fans are upset because we're on hold again. And I know this is a continual topic week to week because it's something that's trending. It's something that people are fired up about. You know, you start losing interest when your favorite fighter is not going to be fighting for a title anytime soon. And worse, nobody wants to fight him, and the UFC should just say, okay, he's fighting for the title. Because, listen, the guy is so serious that nobody wants to fight him. All you guys are on Twitter and things like that saying you want to fight him, or you won't fight him because he's not in the top 5, whatever. So, okay, if nobody wants to fight him, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? Just give the guy a title shot and let everyone cry and complain, and then when he wins the title, everyone will shut up, and then we can move on. So yeah, if you're the UFC, you're taking a big chance, you're taking a big risk, right? Taking the risk that he goes in there and loses and all the boo birds come out and say, see, you shouldn't have got a title shot and all this. But best case scenario, he wins the title and the UFC looks like it nailed it. And I have a good feeling that if Khamzat fights for the title, the UFC will nail it. The UFC will absolutely nail it. Because he's going to come in and get a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round finish. And people are going to be going bananas because he won the title. You know? So that's what the people want to see happen. That's what needs to happen, is that we need Khamzat to fight for a title ASAP. And the UFC is missing its opportunity to look like a matchmaking kings. Like, why do you give an unranked fighter a title shot? Well, he is 3rd in the other division, and he's waiting. So, you know, you could promote it that way. But the reality is the UFC doesn't seem that they want to head in that direction. And it's hard for me to understand. Now, we'll continue with this topic throughout the show, but let's start getting into the predictions because we got 4 of them today. You know, and first, the co-main event from last week, now the main event this week, Song Yadong versus Ricky Simon. This is going to be a big-time fight. The fight is trending. It's not, you know, the best main event. It was a co-main event, right? It got moved to a main event. So it's not the best card, but it's still intriguing because both of these guys are good, and it's a very tough prediction. So let's get into it right now. In the bantamweight division at UFC Fight Night, you got Song Yadong coming in at 19-7, taking on Ricky Simon, who comes in at 20-3. You got to respect that record. I mean, 20 wins, 3 losses. That's incredible. Yadong 2 inches taller at 5'8", but he's given up 2 inches in reach to Ricky Simon, 69-67. Both guys stand right-handed. Yadong a little more active, 4.5 significant strikes per minute to 3. 3 exactly per minute for Ricky Simon. That's a very slow pace. That's because he gets takedowns. 6.5 per minute. Not much to speak of there for Song Yadong. Takedown defense becomes important, and the Kung Fu Kid, aka Song Yadong, has a 71% takedown defense. That's above average, so that'll help in his fight. He lost to Corey Sandhagen by KO, but beat Marlon Moraes by KO, Julio Arce by KO, and he beat Casey Kenny by split decision. These are his last 4 fights, 3-1 in the last 4. Now Ricky Simon, 75% takedown defense. That won't matter. Beat Jack Shore by submission. That's a big one. Sun Tzu, KO. Brian Kelleher, decision. Wow. Perillo by submission, and Ray Borg by split decision. His last loss was to Rob Font. So, to me, this one's easy. I mean, I think Ricky Simon is going to dominate Song Yadong. You know, because forget the activity from Song Yadong. Ricky Simon's just going to go in there and land takedown after takedown, especially when he realizes he can't keep up with Song Yadong. And once he gets those takedowns, it's going to be over. He's going to win 2 rounds out of 3 at minimum if he doesn't get a submission. So I like Ricky Simon to dominate here, to move to 21-3 here in the bantamweight division at UFC Fight Night. In the middle, yeah, so you have Ricky Simon and Song Yadong going at it, and I'm a firm believer that Ricky Simon gets to win here. Now, it's not an easy prediction. In fact, it makes it even tougher that it's the main event and not a co-main, because now our 10-3 record's on the line, right? Because you take a co-main that's a 50-50, a tough fight to predict, and now you move it to a main event. And our prediction was made last week, thankfully, right? We don't have to remake the same video. And we got Ricky Simon winning, so at least I don't have to sit and contemplate. Because the main event, sometimes I already know who I'm going with, but a lot of times I don't. You know, if it's a pay-per-view event, I have a pretty good idea before the prediction. That's like the only fight, really. The rest of them I'm doing right on the spot as I look at the stats. There's no predetermination, but in this one, I'm glad we made the prediction last week because it makes it easier. Now, in the co-main, you got Kyle Barajo taking on Mikhail Alexichuk. Let's get into it. In the middleweight division at UFC Fight Night, you got Kyle Barajo taking on Mikhail Alexichuk. This is going to be a big-time fight. Barajo is undefeated in the UFC so far. He's 13-1 overall. Alexichuk 18-5. Now, Alexichuk 2 inches taller at 6 feet. He's given up 1 inch in reach, 75-74 in favor of Barajo. Both guys, southpaws, they fight left-handed. Now, Alexichuk is a striker, right? He doubles up Barajo like 5 significant strikes to about 2.4 per minute when you're looking at that. But Barajo's game plan is going to be on the takedowns, where he gets a little less than 1 per round, but he certainly gets one almost every fight that he's in. Now, he does have a 50% takedown defense. That's not very good. But again, the guy's undefeated in the UFC. He's 3-0 since coming out of Dana White's Contender Series, where he went 2-0. Since his arrival, he's beat Omar Gadzhiev, Petrosian, and Muradov all by decision. And he's landed at least 1 takedown in each of those fights, including 4 against Petrosian. And you might expect it to be something like that in this fight because Alexichuk has a 43% takedown defense. Not very good. Now he's coming off the KO win over Cody Brundage. He beat Sam Alvey by KO. Those are 2 impressive wins, but he lost to Dustin Jacoby by decision. And he's capable of giving up takedowns. So it's not to say Mikhail Alexichuk can't win this fight, but Barajo has a good chance because the Brazilian's going to go in there and recognize the situation. He needs to get takedowns, and I say he gets 3 or 4 if he doesn't finish Alexichuk sooner. But if it goes to a decision like his last 3 fights, he's looking at 3 or 4 takedowns to win this thing, and I think he can do that. So in my opinion, Barajo wins by decision to move to 14-1, middleweight division, UFC Fight Night. Yeah, so it's real simple. I mean, the guy wins decisions, right? So the prediction just comes down to, do you think it's going to be a finish by Alexichuk, or do you think it goes to a decision? So I'm banking on the fact that this fight goes to a decision, where Barajo seems to get a lot of victories in that way. So why go against him? That's basically what I'm contemplating when I'm looking at this fight. So Kyle Barajo gets the win here in the co-main event. Now on down the card a little bit, you got Rodolfo Vieira taking on Cody Brundage. In the middleweight division at UFC Fight Night, you got Rodolfo Vieira coming in 8-2. The Brazilian takes on the American Cody Brundage, who comes in at 8-3. Now both guys stand 6 feet. Vieira's got a 1 inch reach advantage. They both fight right-handed. Now, into the nitty-gritty. 3.6 significant strikes per minute for Vieira, just 2.3 for Brundage. So the Brazilian, who you'd expect to have a solid ground game as well, is better in significant strikes here. He has, he's more active. But when you get into the takedowns, it's almost even. Both guys well over 3 takedowns over 3 rounds, which equates to about a little more than 1 takedown per round. Now, Vieira, 100% takedown defense. Gives him a major advantage in this fight. Coming off the loss to Chris Curtis by decision, but he beat Dustin Stoltzfus by submission. Lost to Anthony Hernandez by submission. And beat Safarov and Piachota by arm triangle submissions. So all 3 wins by submission. Something to keep in mind here. Brundage, 68% takedown defense. That's average, but not good enough against the Brazilian. Now, he did lose to a guy coming in the next fight after this, Mikhail Alexichuk. He got KO'd, but he beat Tresean Gore by KO, beat Lungi Ambula by submission due to guillotine, and lost to Nick Maximov. So, and in that fight, Maximov had 4 takedowns on him. But in the loss to Alexichuk, he had 3 takedowns, but trailed 15-0 in significant strikes. So, Brundage is, of course, going to try the takedowns. Vieira, great takedown defense, is going to stuff those. He's better on the feet. I just don't see an angle for Brundage to get the job done here based on his previous fighting history. To me, the Brazilian defends the takedowns, lands takedowns. He can do whatever he wants in his fight. Rodolfo Vieira will win this thing easily, but likely by decision. Of course, he wins every fight by submission, so that's not a bad route either. But either way, he moves to 9-2, middleweight division, UFC Fight Night. Yeah, so I mean, that's fight 3, but to me, that's an easy one. I mean, you got to go with the guy. The opponent in this one, I don't think is even going to bring it. I just think it's going to hopefully be an easy victory, but no victory is really easy when you're dealing with UFC fighters, and a guy can get hit one time and it's over, So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I like him to win this fight, no questions asked. Now, another easy prediction. You got Julian Juicy J Arosa taking on newcomer Fernando Padilla. Will I surprise you with this pick? We'll see. In the featherweight division at UFC Fight Night, you got Julian Juicy J Arosa coming in at 28-11, taking on Fernando Padilla, who comes in at 14-4, making his UFC debut. Both guys 6'1". Padilla is still young, only 26 years old compared to the 33-year-old Arosa, but that's like prime age for a UFC fighter. Padilla has a 1-inch reach advantage, 76-75, and that's all we know about Padilla until we look at some other things in just a moment. Now, Arosa is a left-hander, 6.2 significant strikes per minute, 1.7 takedowns over the course of 3 rounds, or really 1 takedown every other round. He does have a 61% takedown defense. That's not great, but quite average, and that could be a problem against a guy in Padilla who has 8 submission victories. Alex Caceres KO'd Juicy J. But before that, he beat Dawadu, Steven Peterson, Charles Jourdain. Those are some big wins by decisions. He did submit Charles Jourdain, so he's 3-1 in the last 4. And in those fights, he defended the takedowns well. That's tough against Dawadu. That's tough against Jourdain potentially, even though he's more of a striker. So you got to keep that in mind here. As we look into Padilla, who's got 8 submission victories, 4 KOs, but he's got 4 losses outside the UFC. Now, a couple notes here. He did beat Derek Minner back in the day in 2017. He lost to Spike Carlisle by decision, came back and won 2 against Nate Richardson and Cameron Graves in LFA and Fury FC 46. So Padilla is going to be much tougher than people think here. That's why these odds are much closer to even. But Juicy J better represent well. He's beating multiple UFC fighters. He lost one here and there, but you can't let a guy in Padilla come in and beat him. Now, he is susceptible to being taken down. He's susceptible to being finishes because Padilla finished 8 opponents by submission, but Arosa might be in trouble for a round, but he's going to win 2 rounds, in my opinion, and he'll escape whatever trouble he's in to move to 29-11. In my opinion, he'll do it with decent takedown defense and especially the striking. That's the key for him to win this fight. Featherweight division, UFC Fight Night. Yeah, I mean, you got to go with Juicy J in this one because too many UFC fights over 40, forget about it. You got to beat a newcomer. You can't let the newcomer come in and beat a guy with 40 professional fights. There's levels to this game. That's just what I think. At least in this one. And if I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected. But in these 4 fights, we like ourselves to go about 3-1. Co-main and main event are probably the 2 trickiest ones. The other 2 I like for sure. In Vieira and Juicy J. And then the other 2 are going to be tough. So let's get to the question of the day. Question of the day. When will Khamzat Chimaev fight for a UFC title? 2023, 2024, 2025, or 2026? That's sad. We had to throw 2026 in there. That's scary. And it's a little surprising when you look at the results. Because you got 22% say this year, 2023. Still 1 in 5. Next year, 46%, nearly half. I'd say that makes sense. But where I'm shocked is 2025, 2%, because 2025 is realistic. it's hard to think because that's like 8 months left plus another 12, 20 months. But if Izzy loses to the winner of Duplessis and Whittaker, which is a title eliminator, so whoever wins that fight's Izzy. If they lose and Izzy gets a rematch, you're looking at 3 straight fights. I mean, by the time Khamzat gets to fight for the title, it's 4 fights later. With 4 to 6 months in between, I could see this thing going into 2025. And I can't stand to say that, but it's true. And then even more surprising, 29% say 2026. No one commented in and said never. I thought we would get a few people who'd be like, he'll never win the title. Because you got to pick one of the 4. So if you don't think he's ever going to win, you hit in the comment never. We didn't get that. So 22% say 2023. 46%, nearly half, 2024. Almost none in 2025. And in 2026, you have more people saying 2026 and 2023 with 29%. So that's the way it stands on the question of the day. Much appreciated for weighing in on that poll. Now let's get into today's Q&A. So Craig says, I don't understand this. UFC knows that Khamzat finishes his opponents quickly, so why not make him fight Costa June or July and then a title fight in October, either welterweight or middleweight? That will be the ideal scenario. Craig, you're speaking too much sense, man. You're making too much sense. Homework. Supposedly Khamzat's manager went live today and said big fight news is coming soon for Khamzat and Costa. Said he'll most likely be fighting Khamzat next once he finalizes his contract and signs it. And he hopes, and everyone hopes, it's before October, but UFC want it in October because of their contract with Abu Dhabi. And, it must be said, Khamzat's having trouble traveling. So that's a problem too. But the UFC is international. They go to London, they go all over the world. So, they can make it happen if they really want to. Jonathan Mungula says early stoppage with the Bruno Silva Brad Tavares fight last weekend. Early stoppage. Tavares was still very aware and defending himself. Ref gave him no chance to bounce back from that knockdown, not KO. I hear you. And, there's a lot of people that were saying the same thing. I disagree. But, because if you're the ref in that situation, then you don't stop it after you got to wait another 2 or 3 punches. And people are like, why'd you let it go so long? The ref's got a tough job. Chumbroni says, I got to say, bro, out of all the people that deserve a break in this area, it's probably you. I see you grinding hard year after year. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Keep it up. I normally troll people, so take this as no light compliment. And I don't, because Jambroni has trolled me before. So when he compliments, hey, we'll take it, man. And we recognize that that's not normal for you. Much appreciated, Jambroni. Moving on, Al Topo Mactapo says Burns is the fave. He's the favorite. But Bilal can win this. And he will call for a title shot and Khamzat and Strickland. Khamzat cannot come to the USA anytime he wants. Yeah, and we know, and that's a problem. We were just touching on that a moment ago. It's a serious problem. WDDR 12 says UFC reduces fighters to Muslim equals Abu Dhabi. Khamzat is a star. Can be in Sweden, USA, etc. Sad how they pigeonholed fighters. Yeah, and listen, again, he does have the visa trouble, so you have to factor that in. But if they really want Khamzat to fight and really make him a star, help him along the way, they can get it done. So I want it to be clear that he has visa issues, but if the UFC wanted to get it done, it's the UFC. They're international. They can get it done. And Baez finessed, something like that, says unimaginably frustrating. It's very frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating that the best fighter in the world can't get a fight. He's made the wait 4 to 6 months with, why do you have Khamzat Chimaev and just have him sitting around for any length of time with no fight? As soon as he beat Kevin Holland, book the next fight. And if nobody wants to fight him, let's make this known, because guys are all on the Twitters and social media saying, hey, I'll fight Khamzat, I'll fight Khamzat, I'll fight. I don't think it's Khamzat saying, no, I won't fight. He should have fought before, if the UFC was doing this right, and you know how much I love the UFC, but on this one, they're getting it wrong. If they wanted to do it right, you book Khamzat before Ramadan, right? So when he's done fighting, he goes through Ramadan, he recovers, and then he starts training. Now, because of Ramadan, and everyone knows it's a Muslim holiday, it's coming, you got to schedule around that. They didn't. So now he has a big break before Ramadan, has to go through that, now recover and strength up a little bit, because you're not eating all day when the sun's up, which is most of the day at this point in the year, for a month. Yeah, you're not fighting for a month or two. So now you got to begin training again, and it keeps him on the sidelines, and it's just not good for the UFC to do that. It's just not smart in any way, shape, or form. But at the same time, the UFC knows what they're doing. But on this one, as a Khamzat fan, it's like, what's going on? We need more answers from the company on this, and I don't think we're going to get them. But listen, that's my rant for today. Just want to see my man Khamzat fight. But for now, this is your boy Chris Cross. Hope you have a great day, and God bless. Peace.